resources ever, the fisherman came flying into the Clash Royale arena, where he started to beat all of the other troops mercilessly with his talking fish. He had shown his face for the first time ever in the Clash Royale arenas to warn all the other troops of an incoming flood. So in today's story, I will explain my version of who the fisherman was before he made it to the Clash Royale arenas, what caused the massive flood in the arenas, and most importantly, why the heck the fisherman has a talking fish.
Maurice, they're not listening!
Find out all of that inside of today's video, the fisherman's origin story. Also, before the video starts, if you want to enter my July giveaway for 2 winners of $50 each, then just like the video and then leave a comment down below using hashtag giveaway, and then let me know what you would spend the $50 on if you won. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the video. And before the full story actually starts, let me give you some context for today's video. Our troops inside of the Clash of Clans village and Clash Royale arenas all battle extremely hard for us. They literally put their lives on the line as they rush into battles and so forth. Although this is the only side of the troops that we ever get to see, when they're not battling to the death, what are they doing? Well, one of the things that all of the troops do in their free time is recharge for their next battles by sleeping and eating. But one lifelong unanswered question has always been, what on earth do our troops eat? Well, they get their food from a number of places, and thankfully it's not from eating their own hogs. Instead, they get all of their fruit and veggies and most meats from a farm not too far away called Heyday, and then they also get a lot of their food from the fishermen. Some troops are born barbarians, some are born giants, and some troops are just born regular villagers who aren't meant to fight in the arenas. Instead, they do regular everyday villager things, like for example, fish for food. Now today's story is going to follow around a regular villager who became a fisherman and whose name is Maurice. Maurice was born a regular villager, and his dad happened to be a fisherman. And so growing up, his dad taught him the ropes, and Maurice eventually became a successful independent fisherman as well. Over time, Maurice became an incredibly talented fisherman and always outfished the rest of the fishermen by catching the majority of the fish. He was very well respected around the Clash of Clans village and Clash Royale arenas, as he could almost single-handedly supply both the clashes with tons of fish. And by catching so many fish, he himself got to eat a lot of them. So he ended up growing a ton and becoming significantly bigger than the rest of the fishermen. He was also so invested in his job that he would never stop by the villages for long. He would typically drop off the fish and then sail straight back into the sea to catch more fish. He was so invested, in fact, that on July 1st, 2019, when a serious storm was reported and all of the other fishermen came back to dock their boats, Maurice decided that he wasn't afraid of any storm and that he was still going to go out and fish and catch the most fish. He wanted to prove to everyone that he was a badass that wasn't afraid of anything. And so he set sail out into the chaotic sea. Once he was out there, the sea was incredibly rough. The wind was blowing at hundreds of kilometers per hour, and the waves were as tall as wizard towers. The storm felt as if it was just raining lightning and tornado spells. And in fact, that's not too far off. That is exactly what happened. Apparently back in the wizard's laboratory, a wizard accidentally knocked over a tornado spell, which broke and ended up twirling around and picking up all the other spell bottles, including the rage spells, lightning spells, and more tornado spells. The tornado ended up throwing all of those spell bottles into the water, which caused the enormous storm. And then the storm ended up going as far as the Clash of Clans village. And when the storm got to the Clash village, unfortunately there was a Dark Elixir storage container being upgraded at the time, and so it was extra fragile. And on top of that, it just so happened to be placed right next to the water. And so when the storm came by, it ended up destroying the fragile Dark Elixir container, and then the full Dark Elixir container ended up spilling out and all of that Dark Elixir poured into the ocean. And as many of you know, Dark Elixir is one of the most powerful substances in the world of Clash, where it has turned barbarians into barbarian kings and archers into archer queens, and is responsible for some of the most powerful troops as well. So when the Dark Elixir poured into the ocean, it ended up causing all of the fish that it had come in contact with to mutate. And luckily though, since there was a storm, there weren't too many fish near the coast of the Clash of Clans village, so not too many of them were affected, although it did still cause a few fish to mutate. Anyway, back to Maurice's boat. As he continued to sail, he was unable to catch many fish since most of them swam deeper into the sea to find calmer waters. Maurice was having a very tough time and wanted to call it quits and head back, but he was so determined to catch more than all the other fishermen that he needed to catch at least one fish before he went back. And so he kept sailing. He eventually got close to the Clash of Clans village, where he thought he heard some screams. He made his way over to where the screams were coming from, and as he got closer, the water started to turn a lot darker. But yet, he still didn't see anyone. Instead, he just saw a fish jumping in and out of the black water. Yet he continued to hear the screams. And so when Maurice saw the fish, he tossed his grappling hook at it and caught it. And when he brought it back to the ship, he thought he heard someone talking to him. He looked up and questioned, "God?" But then he kept hearing the talking, but not from the sky, and instead he looked down and saw that it was somehow the fish that was doing the talking. It turned out that the power of the dark elixir ended up causing the fish to be able to speak. And not only that, now the fish could breathe above water too. The fisherman was obviously dumbfounded by his discovery of a talking and breathing fish, but unfortunately before they could get too acquainted, something else happened. As the dark elixir sunk deeper into the ocean, it eventually hit the sea where it reacted with some of the underwater volcanoes, and caused a massive eruption. The eruption pushed all of the water up, essentially causing a tsunami. This giant wall of water ended up popping up behind the fisherman and his newfound fish friend. When the wave popped up, the fisherman and the fish both looked at each other and then immediately started paddling away as fast as they could. The good news was that the fisherman was the best fisherman in all of the Clash universe, and so he was able to paddle away faster than the tsunami behind him. But the bad news was that the tsunami was heading straight for the Clash Royale arenas, and so since the fisherman was faster than the tsunami, he got to the arena first, but only by a few seconds. The fisherman needed to warn everyone that a giant tsunami and flood was coming, but he didn't have time to simply walk around the arena and walk through the front door. So instead he grabbed his grapple hook and was about to take off, but then he heard his fish yelling at him, "Hey, what about me?" So without having much time to think about it, the fisherman grabbed the talking fish and he threw the grappling hook up. The grapple hook wrapped around one of the arena pillars, and then the fisherman jumped and launched himself over the arena wall, where he landed in the middle of the battlefield. He then started going around trying to warn everyone of the incoming flood, but no one seemed to listen. And so the fish spoke up and told that they needed to be a bit more aggressive with how they were going to warn them. And so the fish went around and started to fish slap all the troops until they listened. Finally, all the troops stopped battling and turned around to see a giant wall of water rushing towards them. And the last thing that the troops heard before they got washed over by the water was Tomb Raider. Anyway, after the water from the floor finally drained away, all of the troops stood there wondering what the heck just happened. But for Maurice, now that the water was all gone, that meant the fisherman could return back to his day job. But before he could leave the arena, the Red King and Blue King stopped him. They both told him that what he did in the arena before the flood came really impressed them, and they would love it if he could stay and fight in their army. The fisherman said that he wasn't too sure, he didn't really want to. But the kings then told him that they could give him a legendary status and pay him a generous amount of gold if he stayed. The fisherman thought it over a little bit, and ended up deciding to stay finally. Mainly because as a fisherman he always wanted to get that next big catch. But now that he caught a breathing and talking fish, he felt like he could never catch anything better than that. It was pretty much the ultimate catch. And so he decided to stay in the arena. And that there is the story of how the fisherman was brought into the world of Clash. Make sure to enter July's giveaway just